Let me start with the discussion of concurrency control management today. Let me share the screen first. I think this screen is visible to you. Okay. So the concurrency control is just following chapter of the transaction. In the book you will find this chapter whose name is concurrency control, chapter number 16. Chapter 15 is the transaction, chapter 16 is the concurrency control. Now before I'm going to start to discuss about the various schemes of concurrency control management, I want to tell you this chapter, this concurrency control management chapter, is generally deals with a property which is called isolation property. So in last class I discussed about the acid property: A for atomicity, C for consistency, I for isolation, and D for durability. In brief, that each and every transactions must ensure, before executing, must ensure this acid property. So within this acid property, I means isolation is one of the very important property that every transaction must ensure before executing. Now this isolation property is generally connected with the characteristic called serializability that I already discussed in my previous class: conflict serializability, view serializability. Now in this chapter our main aim, how to handle or how to preserve that isolation property when multiple transactions are executing. Right, when a single transaction are executing, then there is no question of isolation. Please remember, isolation means accessing a particular data item in mutually exclusive manner. Mutually exclusive manner means, suppose there are two transactions. The first transaction tried to access a data item at a particular time, and the second transaction tried to access the same data item at the same amount of time. That means two transactions are simultaneously executing and they are trying to access the same data item at a particular time. So then there is a problem of confliction and there is a problem of inconsistency. So that's why isolation property comes, which provides that two transactions should executing in a mutually exclusive manner. That means no transaction, execution of one transaction should not create any impact on the execution of other transactions. That is called isolation, and this isolation property is very important to ensure serializability property. Okay, so all of you must read this chapter thoroughly, because this chapter has been very clearly written and understandable in this book of Koth. Okay, you please go through it. I have already uploaded the soft copy of this book in my website. Now this concurrency control chapter generally consists of these topics: log based protocols, timestamp based protocol, validation based protocols, multiple granularity, multi-version schemes, deadlock handling, insertion and insert and delete operations, concurrency control in the structure. So among all these contents, apart from last two contents, just leave the last two contents, because the questions are, in my opinion, the questions are not coming from last two contents. Mainly the previous six contents are very important. Okay, which are part of this chapter. You will get all these contents one by one accordingly, sequentially in this chapter. But I suggest you to read all this content sequentially. Don't skip any content, because otherwise if you skip any content, these contents are actually connected with each other. Okay, you won't understand the next content. So let's start the discussion. So concurrency control is actually a fundamental properties which actually, what I already told, which actually used to ensure the isolation property of a transaction as well as the serializability property of a transaction. So if you remember, when I deal with the transaction, I already discussed about the isolation property, and I told that isolation property will be handled by a special type of management scheme of a database management system, which is called concurrency control management scheme. You can, if you not remember, you can go through that portion. So concurrency control management scheme, we are going to discuss in this chapter how many concurrency management control schemes are there that DBMS system provides us, and what are the details about those schemes and how they are handling the problem of like serializability and the other issues, right? Now the thing is that the first concurrency management control scheme is called log based protocol. It is a log based protocol. So this is a log-based protocol. It's the first concurrency control management scheme. So so what is a log-based protocol? So very simple. What our objective? Our objective is that when two transactions or more than two transactions or multiple transactions are concurrently executing and they are trying to access a particular data item, then there should not be any conflict. Okay, any inconsistency. That means when one transaction try to access the data item, read a data item, at the same time the other transaction try to update the data item. So, so the first transaction which are trying to read the data item, it will get the wrong value because it is in the updating mode in the by the help of second transactions. So that the inconsistency remains there. So that's why the concept of locking or lock-based protocols is actually implemented. Protocols is nothing but a set of rules, and lock-based means very simple. That means if I want to keep safe a particular important item from my home, so how should I make it keep safe? I actually try to put that item into an almirah and try to lock it. Okay, that no other person can use that until I am not releasing the lock or I am not opening the lock or unlock the almirah. The same thing is actually done by the help of transactions. The DBMS, or you can say the concurrency control manager, gives the power to a particular transaction or grants the power of a particular transaction to lock a particular data item for a particular amount of time. When that data item is locked by a particular transaction, no other transaction will be allowed to access that particular data item until that current transaction unlock that particular data item. Okay, so that is a lock-based protocol and its overall scheme. Okay, so a lock is a mechanism to control concurrent access to data item, which I already discussed. Now we have to know how many types of locks are there in lock-based protocol. There are two types of locks: exclusive mode lock, which will be represented by the help of this symbol X, and shared mode lock, which will be represented by the help of this symbol S. Okay, so if you have any sort of query, you can ask me. Okay, I'm always open for you. You can interrupt me, you can ask me. So exclusive mode lock. So exclusive mode lock is a very important lock, and shared mode lock is also important, but it is not stringent like exclusive mode lock. Shared mode lock is flexible lock, and exclusive mode lock is a stringent lock, very strict lock. How? I will tell you. Exclusive mode lock is used for both reading and writing. Reading and writing means updation will be allowed under the exclusive mode lock, X lock. Okay, so X lock is requested, lock X instructions in this way, and it is used for both reading and writing as well. That means for updation type of purpose on a particular data item, a transaction can grant an exclusive mode lock from the concurrency control manager. Please remember, there is a concurrency control manager. A transaction, if it wants to access a particular data item, then it first requests its accessing mode to the concurrency control manager. If the data item is available at that time, the concurrency control manager gives the permission to that particular transaction to lock the data item. Now the transaction, which lock the transaction will use, that actually requested to the concurrency control manager. If the data item does not locked by any other transactions, then a new transaction can use exclusive mode lock on that particular data item. What I said, if the data item does not locked by any other transaction previously, then the concurrency control manager grants the exclusive mode lock to a new transaction to lock the particular data item. But if the transaction has already locked by some other data item, which type of lock? Exclusive mode lock by some other transactions, then there is no other transaction can be allowed to making an exclusive mode lock on the data item. So that's why I'm telling that exclusive mode lock is a stricter lock, strict lock. It's a very strict rule it follows, right? That means if any other transaction has a exclusive mode lock on a particular data item, then no other transaction will be allowed to get a same exclusive mode lock on that particular data item. But this scenario can be changed in case of shared lock. Shared mode, that's why I'm said shared mode lock is a flexible lock. So in shared mode lock, data item can be used only for read. So whenever a reading is happening, only a transaction read the value, only view the value. So then there is no chance of updating the value. Updating means no writing is there. So there is no chance of changing the value or inconsistency of the value. So that's why the shared mode lock is very flexible. That means if a transaction, what do we mean by flexible? If a transaction has a shared mode lock on a data item at a particular time, then any other transaction can get the same shared mode lock on that same item on that same particular amount of time. Concurrency control manager grants this lock. More than one lock on a particular data item, shared mode lock on a particular data item at a particular time by multiple transactions. But it is not possible in case of exclusive mode lock. So what I have already told, this combination, which lock is possible, which one is not, our lock compatibility matrix has been designed based on that. How it will look like? Let's check. This is a lock compatibility matrix. It will look like in this way. Let's check the book. This is a lock compatibility matrix. In this lock compatibility matrix, you will get a simple matrix, shared lock, exclusive lock. In the x-axis, also shared lock, exclusive lock. Now, when the shared is happen, true. True means only two locks can be permitted at a particular amount of time when there is both the locks are shared lock. That's why I've said shared lock are the flexible lock. So that's why true is there. One. Okay, true means one. And in any other cases, that means if a transaction holds a shared lock, no other transaction will be allowed to hold an exclusive lock on that particular data item. Or if the transaction holds an exclusive mode lock, then no other transaction will be allowed to apply a shared lock on the data item. And it is also applicable for both exclusive mode lock for both transactions. So that's why it is only true for when both the locks are shared mode lock, and for any other cases, any other combinations, it is false. That's why it's called compatibility. What is compatibility? So two transactions are compatible when both transactions are performing shared lock on a particular data item. Okay. In other cases, those are non-compatible or uncompatible, you can say. So this is a compatibility function. What I have already discussed about it, this entire para has been written over it. So a compatibility function will look like this: compatibility of A comma B. That means if the matrix has true is a value true if and only if mode A is compatible with mode B. So compatibility of A comma B is equal to 1 or true only if A and B both are shared lock. Okay, these two are the items which are applied on the shared lock. But if these two are the items which are applied any one of the exclusive mode lock, then it will be equal to false. So this is the compatibility matrix for two different transactions Ti and Tj, where Ti not equals to Tj. So this thing has been discussed here. Right. Now, I am showing you one example, one transaction example, how it will happen. First, I am showing you how the locking is possible in case of serial schedule. I have already discussed in my last lecture serial schedule and concurrent schedule in a detailed mode. So first, I am going to discuss about the serial schedule, how the serial schedule is working in case of lock-based protocols. Now, I think all of you have already remembered this concept. That means an amount of $50 will be transferred from account A to account B to account A. So $50 will be debited from account B and $50 will be credited to account A. So in this case, we will do that. First, it will do some updation operations. So obviously, exclusive mode lock must be needed because shared mode lock is not helping here because shared mode lock will not allow you to perform a transaction and updation operation or writing operation. Obviously, updation will be there, so writing will be there. Okay. Now, so the transaction T1 performs hold the data item B on exclusive mode lock. That means you actually make a request for the exclusive mode lock for data item B at a particular amount of time to the concurrency control manager. Now, concurrency control manager, suppose the B data item is not holding by any other transaction, so that's why it has given the permission to access the B or hold the B on exclusive mode lock by transaction T1. Now, after holding the lock exclusive mode lock on transaction on item B, the transaction T1 performs the read operations and then subtract $50 from the B account, right? And then perform the write operation. The updated value has been written, and then the transaction T1 release the lock on item B. Okay, you can understand. So in this way, we can also keep our important files or important documents in the Almira. Okay, until we unlock the Almira, no other will be access that document from the Almira. So in the same way, the next case, so if you hold another exclusive mode lock on item A, item A means on account A, then read A, that $50 which has been debited from account B, that should be credited on account A, and then write it and then unlock it. So it's very simple. So in the last case, in the last transaction, in the last chapters, I didn't use the concept of lock. So that's why there is a very difficulty for serializability issue, right? But in this case, in case of serial schedule, this can be happening. So suppose the data set has more than one transaction. So this is only one transaction. For one transaction, we don't need to care about isolations, locking, all these things. So obviously, we are caring about for those cases when a data set contains more than one transaction. So this is a transaction T1. So we will take one more transaction T2. So more than one transaction is there in the database at a particular time, and these two transactions are executing in a serial schedule, not concurrently, serially. Please remember, not concurrently, serially. If these two transactions executing serially, how log-based protocol is working? That I'm showing you, right? Now the second transaction T2, a very simple transaction. It actually perform only read account A and account B, and then performing a summation of account A and B, total value. So that's why it will only perform the summation. So that's why it will first read the lock the item on by the help of shared lock on item on account A, and then read A and then unlock A. Again lock item on account B and then read B and unlock B, and then displaying A plus B, total summation of these two accounts. So suppose for the sake of simplicity, we'll assume that account A has an initial value of $100 and account B has an initial value of suppose $200. Okay, for sake of simplicity, A has $100, B has $200. Okay, please remember it. We will use it in future. Now, this sort of schedules are called serial schedules. So after T1, T2 will execute, or after T2, T1 will execute. So no sort of isolation is there. Okay, no confliction probability is there. But if this case, so in this serial schedule, the total amount will be, consistency will be maintained. So before this operation, the B has $200, A has $100. So B minus 50 means 200 minus 50 means $150, and 100 plus 50 means $150, and 150 plus 150 means $300. Okay, so total before the transaction, total amount was 100 plus 200, $300, and after the transaction the amount was 150 plus 250 is equal to also is 150 plus 50 is equal to also 250 plus 50 is equal to also $300, right? So the summation is maintained in case of serial schedule, but this is a problem when we are using a concurrent schedule. So this is an example of a concurrent schedule. Look at the example very carefully. The same two transactions that I have already discussed. These are transaction T1 for $50 minus and $50 plus, and this is transaction T2 for summation of A plus B. And this is a concurrency control manager, how it will grant the permission for individual transaction for an individual data item. So let's check it out very carefully. Look at it. What I'm saying. The first case that it performed the exclusive lock on account B. Concurrency control manager, T1 actually makes a request for this lock to the concurrency control manager. Concurrency control manager provides a grant on of an exclusive lock on item B or on account B by the help of T1 transaction. Grant is successfully given. Now, after making a grant, T1 performs the read operation, subtract $50 from account B, write B, and unlock B. Very good. Now, before performing this addition operation or credited operation, suppose T2 has started, and T2 perform requesting a shared lock on data item A, because data item A has not been occupied by any other transaction, T1 transaction, so it can easily do that. So concurrency control manager successfully grant the shared lock on data item A by the help of transaction T2. Now read the item A, unlock A, and then it will also request for shared lock on item B, granting the shared lock on item B by concurrency control manager to transaction T2. Read B, unlock B, display A plus B. So please remember what value it will display in this case. That is my question here. Because after this display A plus B, then transaction T1 is again context switching. So there is a context switching by the operating system. I have discussed in the last class. There is a context switching concurrent schedule. So after context switching from T2 to operating system takes the control to T1. T1 again granting for a lock of requesting for a lock of exclusive lock on A and granting it, and then read A plus 50, write A. So if you remember, if you check the logic here. So if suppose the B will start with an account value 100 and A has 200. I already told. So before the concurrent transactions, these two concurrent transactions, the total value sum of A plus B is equal to 300. 100 plus 200, 300. That we have already mentioned that how serial schedule will maintain the consistency of the database. That means the summation of A plus B before transaction, before the serial schedule transaction, will be equivalent to the after the serial schedule transaction of A plus B. So here in concurrent schedule, whether it will maintain or not, that I will check. So before the total value, before transaction, total value of A plus B is equal to 300 because B is 200, 1 is 100. Now, $50 has been subtracted. Now the value of B is suppose 50. 100 minus 50 is 50. A has 200. Now A has been read. What value A has? 200. Read and unlock. Okay. B has read. What value of B has right now? 50. Not 100. 50. So 200 A and 50 B. So what will be the total display of A plus B right now? 200 plus 50 is the value of B. So $250 is the display. And after that, after displaying $250, then perform the addition operation of $50 to the A. So after displaying $250, the A will be updated. So the output of these transactions will be $250 instead of $300. So that is a problem of inconsistency here. That is the problem of inconsistency here. Because why the problem of inconsistency we are seeing here? Because the transaction T1 leaves the lock or unlock the data item B before performing the operation of display plus B. If it will hold the lock, suppose it will not perform this unlock operation here, it will perform this unlock operation after this operation unlock A and unlock B. Then T2 transaction will never get a shared lock on B, because in compatibility matrix, if any one transaction already hold exclusive lock on B, then no other transaction will get any other lock on B. So it is not possible. This steps cannot be performed by T2 if it will not unlock the B, and if it will unlock the B at the end of the transactions, so it cannot be performed by T2. You can understand. So if we just change this unlock B and we will do the unlock B after this statement, then T2 has to perform this fourth statement, last fourth statement, at the end of this unlock A and unlock B of T1. And after end, if it will perform this display plus B, then the total value will be again maintained. 100 plus 200, 150 plus 250 plus 50 is equal to 300. So that's the thing that's tell in this transaction, that instead of unlocking the items at any middle positions of the transaction, it will unlock the items at the end of the transaction. That means at the first it will lock the item, read B and perform write B operation. It will not unlock the item B, then lock the item for A, exclusive lock, and then perform operation on A, write A, and then perform unlocking operation. So first perform the locking operation and then perform the unlocking operation. So this is one of the way of preserving the serializability property in terms of concurrent schedule. Right? I think you can understand what I am trying to say. So if you have any question, you can ask me. Then I will move to the next one. If you have any question, you can ask me. Is there anyone has any question?
লক আনলকটা একবার একটু বলো।
লক আনলকটা কোন জায়গায় বলো? Which place? So if you check, I'm repeating this thing again. Please check the compatibility matrix which I already show. This is the cases where shared is possible, true. If any transaction holds any other exclusive lock on a particular item, then no other lock will work. For all the other cases, that's why it's false has been written. Okay, only if a transaction holds a shared lock on the data item, then other transaction will be allowed to hold a shared lock on that particular data item. Right. So this thing has been discussed. I have here. So here the T1 transaction performs the exclusive lock on B, and it will unlock the B before performing the credit operation on A. So that's why the display A plus B holds a wrong value, inconsistent value. Okay, because 100 minus 50 is there, but 200 plus 50 was not there before displaying the operation. Okay, because before displaying these instructions of transaction T1, these instructions are going to be executed. So that's why inconsistency was there. So that's why if unlock B is performed after this statement, unlock A, then T2 transaction will never be performed this fourth statement here in this place. It can perform this fourth statement only after here, only after the operation of B, of operation of A. And after performing the operation of A, this for statement will preserve the consistency of the database. That's what I need to tell. So that's why it performs the locking operation in the first 4-5 statement and then perform the unlocking operation at the end. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so this is one of the things that I already discussed about how to maintain the serializability issues or isolation issues in case of concurrent schedule as well as serial schedule. Now the thing is that these are not only problem. There is one more problem associated with it. The problem name is called deadlock and starvation. These two are the very important problem that are also associated with this sort of transactions. Okay, so let me give me one example. This is one example. Two transactions were there of a particular data set. One is transaction T3 and one is transaction T4. So in this transaction, if it will perform the operation, it's the same operations, and then lock exclusive mode lock on B, read B, perform the subtraction, write B, and then it's shared lock on A, read A, shared lock on B, and then perform the exclusive mode lock on A. So if you look at this schedule very carefully, what is deadlock? Suppose two persons are trying to write. I am giving you one real life example about deadlock. Suppose two persons are trying to write something on a paper. Now I have, suppose I am the person, another person sitting in front of me. Suppose I am occupying the pen for before writing, and he is occupying the paper. So if I have the pen but I don't have the paper, so I cannot write anything. But he has the paper and he doesn't have the pen, so he also is not able to write anything. So that is called deadlock. Any one of us should leave something for the other guy. Otherwise, we will sit indefinitely, infinite amount of time until we will get the resource of the other person. So I need either the paper from that person or that person will need the pen from me. So that is the scarcity of resources will create the situation called deadlock. Okay, and deadlock is one of the very important situation, very problematic situation in any real life data set handling or this sort of transaction issues. So in this transaction, if you say this is a concurrent schedule, in this transaction, it also deadlock occurs. Look at the schedule very carefully. Lock S of A, the shared lock is actually applicable for T4 on the data item A, but look here very carefully. This transaction T3 is performing the exclusive lock on A, but until the T4 does not release the lock of A, T3 has to wait in a queue to get a lock, because shared and exclusive lock cannot be possible according to lock compatibility matrix. It cannot be possible on the same data item at a particular amount of time. So it is not unlock operation has been performed here, so it has to wait. That is the first one. So there's a cycle from T4. There's a edge from T4 to T3. Okay, a directive edge. Now the same cases happen here. Look, T4 is requesting for a shared lock on item B, which has been already held by T3 on an exclusive lock. So it is also not possible until T3 release the lock. T4 has to wait for an infinite amount of time. So there is another edge between T3 and T4. So in virtual, you can see there is a cycle exists between T3 and T4 and T4 and T3. Okay, when an edge occurs, when a transaction waiting for another transaction, then an edge occurs. And if the edge performs a cycle, then we can say that these two transactions are in part of deadlock situations. Okay, and this graph is called wait for graph. I will also show that graph in future. This graph is called wait for graph. Okay, T3 and T4 are in a deadlock situation. So this is a deadlock situation. I am already given an example of in case of locking how the deadlock situation occurs. Okay, so we shall require that each transaction in the system follow a set of rules called the locking protocols, and locking protocol sometimes creates a problem like deadlock. Okay, it's a evil associated with locking system. Okay, and it will if you want to avoid the inconsistent state, then we will face a deadlock situation. So if I want to avoid the inconsistent state, okay, in this way, then we can face a situation called deadlock. Okay, so this is an example of situation called deadlock. So everyone must read it out, read this thing very carefully. What I already discussed that has been told here. Okay, Now, granting of locks, how the granting of locks will be performed. So I think this session will be over. So I am just leaving this session. Please everyone go for the next session. In the next session, I will take maximum 10 minutes. Okay, just go for the next session.
So it is showing this session as no longer a limit.
No longer a limit. Okay,
No,
okay,
sir, it
fine.
was the message.
Okay. Then I'm going to continue. Okay. Yes, it doesn't have a limit because I actually log in this session with a new email ID. That's why it's shown the no longer the limit. I forget it. Okay, so granting of locks. How the locks has been granted. Okay, very simple issue. The how the concurrency control manager granting a lock to a multiple transactions. Now the thing is that when a transaction requests a lock on a data item in particular mode and no other transaction has a lock on the same data item, which I already discussed, conflicting mode is there. However, care must be taken to avoid the scenario. So I already told that suppose a transaction T2 has a shared mode lock on the data item and another transaction T1 requests an exclusive mode lock on the data item. Clearly, T1 has to wait for T2 to release the shared mode lock, which I already told in this case of scenario that this transaction has to wait for the T3 to release the lock and this transaction has to wait for T4 to release the lock. Okay, so this is one of the situation. Now the thing is that suppose now look the scenario very intuitively. The scenario for the starvation I am going to discuss how the starvation occurs. Okay, what is the way of starvation occurs during these transactions. Now suppose there are two transactions T1 and T2. Okay, and T1 T2 is waiting for each other. Okay, until T1 release the lock, T2 cannot move, or until T2 release the lock, T1 cannot move. So clearly T1 has to wait for T2 to release the shared mode lock. Meanwhile, a transaction T3 may request a shared mode lock on the same data item. Okay, transaction T3, suppose another transaction comes and it requests a shared mode lock on the same data item. Okay, now the lock is compatible with the lock granted to T2 because actually T1 is waiting for T2. So T2 hold a lock, okay, shared mode lock, but T1 apply for exclusive mode lock. Please listen very carefully. T2 has a shared mode lock on a particular data item and T1 is applying for exclusive mode lock on the data item. So according to lock compatibility issue, if a transaction holds a shared mode lock on a data item, no other transaction will be allowed to apply exclusive mode lock on the data item. Only a transaction with a shared mode lock is accessible. So let's a new transaction comes T3 with a shared mode lock, not exclusive mode lock. So T2 so concurrency control grants a permission to access the same data item which T2 holds a shared mode lock because shared is possible according to compatibility matrix. Shared by T2 and shared by T3 is true. So the lock request is compatible with the lock granted to T2 or T3 may be granted with the shared mode lock. Very good. So at this point T2 may release the lock, right? Why T2 release the lock? Because it's suppose his job has been done, so T2 has released the lock, but still T1 has to wait. Why? Because T2 released the lock, but T3 has already occupied the lock because shared mode lock T3 is applied for shared mode lock. So T3 doesn't need to wait because shared is possible. So T1 has to wait again. Okay, because T1 has to apply exclusive mode lock on data item, not shared mode lock. That's why after T2 releasing the lock, T3 gain the lock, shared mode lock. Okay, during the transaction before T2 release the lock, and then T1 has to wait. Now suppose T3 is going to be finished. Okay, it's very near to finish the operations and try to unlock the data item. But suppose another transaction, suppose T4 comes with a new shared mode lock. So T3 holds the shared mode lock on the data item. T4 comes and again apply for shared mode lock on the same data item. And it's granted easily because shared is true. So again T1 has to wait for T4. So I think you can understand. Okay, the situation. So each and every case says T1 has to wait because the other transaction will get the privilege because they are demanding for shared mode lock and shared is true and T1 is demanding for exclusive mode lock. That's why it has to wait. So how much time the T1 has to wait? That is the question. It may be an infinite time because until T4 finished, suppose T5 came, with a shared mode lock. After T5 finished, suppose T6 came with a shared mode lock, and so on, and so on. So in this case, so যেরকম আমরা রেশন লাইনে দাঁড়িয়ে থাকি, when we are standing in a ration line, suppose a person who are coming with a big list of items, and it will take a huge amount of time for the seller to keep up all those items, okay, to contain all those items, to sell all those items. And a person which he or she are coming with a small item, one or two items to take. So dokandar ki kore, is try to release those persons which are coming for with the small items, and the person who are getting a big list of items, he or she has to wait for a infinite amount of time. Tarpor amader jhogড়াটি hoy, we are trying to make a collision with the shopkeeper and those things. So we actually stop. So here the T1 transaction has actually stopped to death, infinite time, because T1 doesn't know when it will get a chance to make an exclusive lock on the data item. Okay, so this situation is called, the transaction T1 may never make progress and is said to be stopped. This situation is called starvation. So I think your conception will be clear. What is starvation? So in examination, starvation has come. The difference between deadlock and starvation. Deadlock and starvation is two different things. Starvation means a transaction may have to wait for an infinite amount of time. It has no chance to progress. That is called starvation. But deadlock is a situation where one transaction depends on other transaction. Until that transaction releases that particular resource, a particular item, the other transaction cannot move. Okay, and that depends on vice versa. So they are actually holding of each other. Okay, that is a deadlock situation. Now we can avoid starvation. How we can avoid? This is also you have to know how we can avoid the starvation of transaction by granting locks in the following manner. There are two ways of how we can avoid transaction. The first way, the very simple way. Yes, any question? Okay, how we can avoid the transaction, how we can avoid the starvation in transaction? Suppose we can give a priority to the transaction. Suppose the person who comes first to the get a item in a shopkeeper into a shop, the shopkeeper will give the priority to that person. So in that case, starvation will never be possible, because I can come with a big list, but I have come before the person who are coming with a small list. That's why, as per the watch, as per the time, so that's why the shopkeeper will give me the privilege. So the same thing has been applied here. The T1 transaction came first before T3, T4, T5 and other transaction. That's why after T2, only T1 has got the chance to get a locking mode on that particular data item. And who will decide it? The concurrency control manager will decide it. Okay, this starvation can be solved in this way by providing a priority queue. That means priority wise a queue has been maintained, and in that queue first T1 wait for the data item, then the other transaction will come as per the time, T3, T4, T5 and so on. So there is no other transaction holding a lock on queue in a mode that conflicts with M. And the second one, there is no other transaction that is waiting for a lock on queue and that made its lock request before Ti. So this is a priority queue. This second point is regarding the priority queue. So the other lock request will never get blocked by a lock request that is made later. Now, the last topic of today that I am going to discuss, that is a two-phase locking protocol. Another sort of locking protocol, not another sort of locking protocol, it's part of that lock-based protocol. It's a specific lock-based protocol which is called two-phase locking protocol. It's very, very important. This topic is very, very important. You can assume the question has already come from this topic. Two-phase locking protocol, the short form is 2PL. P capital, L capital. P for phase, L for locking. Two-phase locking protocol. Now, what is two-phase locking protocol and why it is called two-phase? The two-phase locking protocol always ensures serializability. Is the two-phase locking protocol. Now, how it will ensure the serializability? Why it is called two-phase? Because it has two phases. One is growing phase and another one is shrinking phase. Let's come to this discussion. Two-phase locking protocol has two phases. One is growing phase, another one is shrinking phase. So what is growing phase? So in the growing phase, it will allow all the transaction is getting only lock in that phase. That means transactions are making a request to granting a lock in that phase. That is called growing phase. And shrinking phase, the second phase is shrinking phase. In shrinking phase, transaction can only release lock or unlock the data item. No new locks has been granted or acquired in shrinking phase. So please try to understand growing phase and shrinking phase. What is growing phase? In growing phase, only new lock has been granted on data items by transactions. No other transaction can release lock in the growing phase. Only granting lock is allowed. In the shrinking phase, just opposite of it, only releasing lock is allowed. Granting of new locks is not allowed. Okay, so in this case, how it will look like? This is one example has been given. I'm showing here the very good example. The transaction T1 and T2 is executing based on the conception of implementing of two-phase locking protocol. So in two-phase locking protocol, there is lock of S of A. So shared lock on A, shared lock on A by T2, exclusive lock on B by T1, unlock A by T1, exclusive lock on item C by T2, unlock B. So you will check very carefully. In case of T1, the step number 1, 2, 3 are for only granting locks. So you can say this is the growing phase. You can say step number 1, 2, 3 is the growing phase for T1, and step number 5 to 7 is the shrinking phase of T1. Am I clear? These are two-phase locking, and in the middle, this dash line is this dash line for step number 4 for T1. Don't check the T2. T2 I will discuss later. T1, this dash line is called lock point. What is lock point? Lock point is such a point which will
স্ক্রিন শেয়ার করেছেন?
হ্যাঁ স্ক্রিন শেয়ার দেখতে পাচ্ছ না?
না স্যার।
ও সরি বলবে তো এতক্ষণ। So the growing phase, okay, theory bolechi. So check this transaction. I'm repeating this one again. In the two-phase locking, so this transaction T1 and transaction T2 are executing simultaneously. So in the two-phase locking, what I told, there are two phases. One is growing phase and one is shrinking phase. In the growing phase, always granting of lock is allowed. In the shrinking phase, always releasing a lock is allowed. Okay. So check out the transaction T1 first, then we will come T2 later. In T1, step number 1 to step number 3, these two are the part of the growing phase. These three steps, 1, 2, 3 for transaction T1. Don't look at the transaction T2. And step number 5 to 6 is the shrinking phase, because only unlocking or releasing lock is achieving there. If any new lock has been entering there, then we cannot say it's a shrinking phase. Then it is not part of two-phase locking protocol. Two-phase locking protocol is divided the granting lock and releasing lock into two different phases. One is growing phase and another one is shrinking phase. Now this dash line is actually used to distinguish between this growing phase and shrinking phase, and this dash line is called a lock point. The lock point is such a point which we actually use to distinguish between growing phase and shrinking phase. Okay, the same thing can be applicable for T2. If you check the T2, step number 2 to up to step number 7 are the growing phase. Okay, and step number 8 to up to step number 9 are the shrinking phase for transaction T2. And which step is the lock point here? Step number 7 is a lock point here in case of transaction T2. So this thing has been discussed here. Two-phase locking has come multiple times into the exam, and you will have to give such an example, simple example, to discuss about two-phase locking. Okay, so you can understand if the locking phase has been distinguished in two different ways. That means the first phase, growing phase, is only for getting a lock, granting a lock, and shrinking phase is only for releasing a lock. Then there is a less chance of conflicting the phase. So before transaction T2, if T1 release the lock, okay, so then there is a problem. So in this case, actually the maintenance issue is less, because two different phases has been distinguished. One is for only granting phase, another one is for only releasing phase. So this is about lock point. But two-phase locking protocol has two drawbacks or disadvantages, very important. Okay, the first disadvantage is called cascading rollback, which I already discussed in transaction chapter. Cascade-less schedule. If you forget it, please check the view serializability lecture. In view serializability lecture, discuss about cascading rollback, cascade-less schedule. So cascade-less schedule is not at all acceptable in any case of transaction. But in case of two-phase locking protocol, cascade-less schedule or cascading rollback is possible in case of two-phase locking protocol, and that is not acceptable. So this is a drawback of two-phase locking protocol. Another drawback, deadlock and starvation. Till now, deadlock and starvation is a very difficult issue. Till now, I didn't tell you any way. Only one way I am telling to handle the starvation, that is priority queue way. Okay, deadlock deadlock prevention, deadlock handling, I will discuss in a separate lecture where I discuss about the deadlocks. Okay, there's one separate lecture I will give for deadlock discussions. Okay, So this is the another example where the cascading rollback is possible in case of two-phase locking. Cascading rollback means, if you remember, I've told if there are three transactions, if any one transaction, this T2 transaction depends on T1, T3 transaction depends on T2. How depend it? Look very carefully. Read A. So how it will read A until the T1 write a value, T2 then read the same value which has been written by T1. In the same way, read A. T2 write a value of A and then that has been read by T3. So cascading rollback means if this transaction T1 has somehow terminate, it's some any problem is there, any sort of loopholes is there. That's why T1 in sort of error is there. That's why T1 has been terminated or has been rolled back. This is a fail and rollback. Then T2 is also rolled back along with T1, and T3 also rolled back along with T2, because these are dependent on each other, because it reads the same value which has been written by T2, and T3 reads the same value A which has been written by T2. Okay, so this is called a cascading rollback, and this cascading rollback is not at all acceptable in case of any ideal transaction of a data set, but in two-phase locking protocol, cascading rollback is possible. Okay, so these are the two disadvantages, drawbacks of two-phase locking protocol. There are two types of two-phase locking protocol that you need to understand. Okay, there's a deadlock situation has been discussed. I think you can read it out. You can easily understand how the deadlock has been done, because I already discussed about deadlock in my in this lecture in the previous case, that two transaction T2 and T3 and T4 are working in deadlock situation. I already discussed this example. I already discussed with you. Okay, about the deadlock situation. Okay, the same thing has been discussed here, right? Now there are two type of two-phase locking protocol. One is strict two-phase locking protocol, and another one is rigorous two-phase locking protocol. One is strict two-phase locking protocol, and another one is the rigorous two-phase locking protocol. This is a strict two-phase locking protocol and rigorous two-phase locking protocol. What do you mean by strict two-phase locking protocol? In strict two-phase locking protocol, this protocol requires not only that locking be two-phase, but also that all exclusive mode locks taken by a transaction be held until the transaction commits. Okay, and this requirement ensures that any data retained by an uncommitted transactions are locked in exclusive mode until the transaction commits, preventing any other transaction from reading the data. So it will avoid it by modification two-phase locking protocol. It's actually a modification. These two are the modification of two-phase locking protocol, strict and rigorous. I want to say one thing, that in real life situation, in real life handling a real life multiple transaction concurrent transaction situation, the developer preferred to use the DBMS preferred to use this either strict two-phase locking protocol or rigorous two-phase locking protocol. This basic two-phase, which I had already discussed, these are basic two-phase locking protocol. Basic two-phase locking protocol are generally not used in publicly in case of real life data set. Generally, this strict two-phase locking and rigorous two-phase locking protocol are using. Okay, in case of real life situations. Okay, in case of real life situation, these two type of locking protocol using, and there's a lock conversions are allowed. What is the lock conversions? Lock conversions is also using in case of real life situations, along with the rigorous and two-phase strict two-phase locking protocol. Lock conversion means which is upgrading and downgrading of lock. Suppose a transaction holds a lock, suppose exclusive lock on a data item, and it will switch. We can switch from exclusive lock to shared lock, that is called downgrading lock. Okay, and downgrading lock is possible into the shrinking phase, and upgrading lock means from shared lock to exclusive lock in the upgrading lock is an example of upgrading lock. Shared lock is the lowest priority lock, and exclusive lock is the highest priority lock. So when the lock mode has been changed from shared to exclusive, it's called upgrading lock, and it is done in the shrinking phase. And downgrading means exclusive to shared lock is downgrading lock, and it is done in the shrinking phase, and upgrading lock is done in the growing phase. Okay, so these are the two lock conversion. I think all of you please check it, read it out, the lock conversions, and in the real life situation generally it will use the lock conversions. Okay, so what I already told about strict two-phase locking, that this protocol requires not only that locking be two-phase, but also that all exclusive mode locks taken by a transaction be held until the transaction commits. So the exclusive locks which has been taken by a transaction until the transaction perform the commit operation, until that amount of time, all the transaction must hold its exclusive mode lock. It is not true for shared mode locks, but it is true for exclusive mode lock in case of strict two-phase locking protocol. Okay, not only it will divide only growing phase and shrinking, it will divide. It is part of 2PL, so it will divide the total phase into shrinking and growing phase. But it will it will also give the protocol that the transaction which holds the exclusive mode lock must be held that lock until the transaction commits. And this requirement ensures that any data retained by an uncommitted transaction are locked in exclusive mode until the transaction commits, preventing any other transaction from reading the data. Okay, until transaction commits, no other data will be allowed to reading the particular data. So my suggestion is to read out these two types of locking at your home: strict two-phase locking and rigorous two-phase locking. And this lock conversion, this upgrading and downgrading of lock conversions. Okay, so just read it at your home by your own. If you have any sort of problem regarding this, you will please tell me. I already told the two drawbacks of two-phase locking. The first drawback is cascading rollback is possible, and second drawback is deadlock and starvation is also possible. That means two-phase locking is not free from deadlock, it's not free from starvation. Okay, so there's some other type of locking we will learn in future, that is timestamp ordering, timestamp order protocol locking. So that sort of protocol are used to free from deadlock and starvation. Okay, so that's all about today's lecture. So if you have any question, you can ask me. Anyone has any question? Okay, first of all of you must read it. Okay, and up to this part, up to before implementation of the locking. Okay, up to this point, from the starting of the chapter, go through thoroughly line by line, read it. If you have any question, write it down and ask me in the Google Classroom. Okay, or in the next lecture, before the next lecture. Please go through it. And I also uploaded one video on SQL Lab today on the database view, how to create database view, how to handle database view. Please go through it, because lab is also important for you, because without SQL Lab or DBMS cannot learn. Okay, so shall I close the session? Anyone has any question? Is anyone there?
Yes, sir.
Anyone has any question?
Sir.
No, sir.
Okay, then I am going to close the session. Okay, everyone must learn it and submit the assignment and quiz as per the time that I have already scheduled. Okay. Okay, thank you all for watching this. Okay.
Okay, sir.